Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for another Triangle Talks event. Today, we are so excited to be hosting a State of the City with mayors from Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill so that we can talk about issues that are most important to older adults in their communities. Scott Buell, one of our lead volunteers here in the Triangle, is going to be leading our talk. Scott, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Pax. Appreciate it. Welcome to this edition of AARP's Triangle Talks on Livable Communities. I'm going to introduce our guests for today's discussion, and then I'll give a brief overview of AARP's network of age-friendly communities so that you have a background in kind of the important topics and issues that AARP is focusing on. So with that, Pax, if you could bring the mayors online, I would please welcome from Durham, Mayor Steve Schuell. He was elected to City Council and served on City Council in Durham from 2011 to 2017, and then was elected mayor in 2017 and was reelected in 2019. He is the founder of Indie Week, the online and weekly publication that you see around detailing events of the Triangle and life in the Triangle. And he proposed and passed a $95 million affordable housing bond in Durham in 2019. And in his spare time as being mayor, he is an assistant professor at Stanford School of Public Policy at Duke University. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Then from Chapel Hill, we have Mayor Pam Heminger. This is her third term as mayor. She's previously served on the Chapel Hill and Carrboro City Schools Board of Election and the Orange County Board of County Commissioners. Chapel Hill passed a $10 million affordable housing bond in 2018. She lists her longtime passions include the environment and social justice. So welcome.
Thank you.
And then from Raleigh, we have Mary Ann Baldwin, who was just elected in 2019 as mayor. Prior to that, she served on the City Council for 10 years from 2007 to 2017, where she served as chair of the Law and Public Safety Committee and Transportation Committee, and as the city's representative to Go Triangle, the transportation. Raleigh just passed last week an $80 million affordable housing bond. So welcome. Thank you all. Before I get back to the mayors, I want to provide an overview on AARP's initiative in establishing their network of age-friendly states and communities. While AARP is focused on the 50-plus population, the features that make a community desirable for an 80-year-old also make it desirable for an 8-year-old. So the goals of livable communities are all inclusive. AARP bases their livable community definition upon the World Health Organization's 8 domains of livability. And they include outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, which we just talked about with the housing bonds, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and participation in employment, communication and information, and community support and health services. So important in this wonderful year we're living in. If you would like more information on livable communities, please visit the website www.aarp.org/livable-communities. There's a wealth of information there. Now, Orange and Wake joined the network of livable communities in 2016 and have action plans. Durham County joined in 2019, and as far as I could tell, are still progressing their action plan at this point. Raleigh has outlined 6 goals that align with those 8 levels of the WHO standards, and Orange County has 8 focus areas. So with that, I would like it perhaps if we could take maybe 4 or 5 minutes apiece. I'll call you out on each one of them, and you could provide an update as you know, briefly, not necessarily in all details, of where you stand on your plans for the livable community and where we go from here. And I'll start, I don't know if you see the same window as I do, but I'm going to do it like a Hollywood Squares. I want to start with the upper right-hand corner of Mayor Baldwin. If you could tell us, and we need to unmute you. There we go. You're unmuted now.
So the county has been really the lead, I believe, on this initiative, and we are in partnership with them. We've had a number of conversations, around the issues that we're going to talk about today, housing being primary, transit being a focus, also looking at parks and recreation. I've sat through a number of conversations, Scott, where we had presenters come in and they talked about creating cities for like people from 8 to 80. And I think that is such an important distinction, because what is good for somebody 80 is also good for somebody who's 8 years old. So I really love that part of it. So I think what we're really focusing on in Raleigh is how do we continue to address the major issues of our time, and then how do those all fit into this whole concept. And as you may know, we recently got a new city council. That council has been extremely aggressive, especially addressing our zoning issues and housing issues, to provide more housing choices. And I know there's going to be some questions about that later, so I'll save the details. But housing choice, that's important no matter how old you are. Having the ability to hop on a bus or ride a bike is important no matter how old you are. If you're like me, you want to ride your Peloton because you feel a little safer than riding on some of our streets. But the fact is we have, especially as we have an aging population, and we're seeing more and more what I call the trailing grandparents, people who move here and then their families move to be with them. So we're seeing just a change in demographic. One thing I want to mention too is we as a city actually made it really, really difficult to build any form of senior housing, congregate care, senior housing. We limited the acreage, whatnot. Just last week, the city council changed those rules after going through a tax change process. So these are the types of things that are tops on our list. And I don't want to take too much time from the other mayors, so I'm going to zip it now.
Have to learn where all the unmute buttons are. They're in different places on different platforms here. Thank you, Mayor Baldwin. I appreciate that. And I did not know about the city council rule change from last week. I'll look into that and see that. And now if we could go to Durham and Mayor Steve Schuell and learn about what progress Durham has been making. We've got to unmute you. Either you can do it yourself, or Pax, if you can help. I don't have the ability. There we go.
Yeah, sorry about that. First, I want to say hello to my fellow mayors. We have a lot of fun together and do a lot of good work together. It's great to see you guys. Scott, Durham has a master aging plan that has, as Mary Ann said, that has been developed with the leadership of our county, but the city has been integral to it, and it's, I think, been a really good process. As you say, we were a little behind Chapel Hill, or rather Orange and Wake, in adopting our plans, but we have a really good master aging plan And I want to thank Melissa Black, who's the coordinator for this work from the county, for really helping make me aware of this, and I really appreciate that. We have right now in Durham, we have 51,000 people who are over the age of 55,000 people who are over the age of 60, and that's going to be 91,000 people in 20 years. So this is a huge change. As one of those people, it's important to me personally, as well as to our whole community, that we're able to do the kinds of things that we know we want to do to make Durham an age-friendly community. We've had working groups around each of the topics. We have a transit working group, a housing working group, an open space working group, and so forth. And then we have used the 8 principles that you referred to and set goals and kind of groups that will be responsible for achieving goals for each of those areas. And I think that, I'll just mention a couple things that I think have been really important to us. I know we're going to talk a little about housing later, so like Marianne, I'll save that. But just one of the highlighted areas was transportation, an area that we have a lot of concern about, that it be age, that we make our age-friendly community include transportation. So Chapel Hill has fare-free buses. We would like to have fare-free buses. We do during COVID. But we think that would be really important. More routes, more shelters, more benches, better lighting, all of the things that make for a friendlier and better transit system. We want to make biking and walking safe for our aging population. We want protected bike lanes and bike paths. We want sidewalks that are protected and that are fixed up and that are ADA compliant. We're spending a huge amount of money in Durham on sidewalks and bike lanes and bike paths now. And we want transportation that gives people access to food, health facilities, social services, like Go Durham's food shuttle for seniors, which has really been a great innovation. So I'll just highlight that one area. Each of the areas that we have in our plan has been, we've attached goals to them and then indicators of success, and as well as I said, groups who are responsible for those. So I feel really good about where we're going, and our county, I think, has done a great job leading this process, and we're glad to be part of it.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. And now we'll go to Mayor Pam Heminger from Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill is probably the smallest jurisdiction that we have in this thing, and I don't know if that makes it easier or harder for you. Different, yes. And
makes it different.
Plus, you have a few students there in normal years.
It is different in Chapel Hill, being a university town, but I will tell you, our senior population is one of our fastest growing populations, and we love our seniors. They add a vibrancy to our community that kind of balances with the students, which is really great. And we're seeing the same kind of trend you heard. People are moving here to be with their families, but we're also seeing that aging in place, a lot of aging in place. People want to stay in the university community because they like the fare-free transit, because they like all the greenways, because they like the arts and the things that come with being in a university town. But they also had a lot of needs, and we did our master aging plan together. We pulled folks together to hear what we weren't doing well. And to be honest with you, fare-free transit's great. I mean, really, it helps everyone. But we weren't actually taking the seniors into account as much as Mayor Schuell just said. Better bus stops, better information about where to go things. We actually did training of our drivers to deal with our senior population, communicating in different languages. We also have a fabulous senior center in conjunction with the county, and we made it the one-stop shop, so that people who come to our community or here or looking for things to do can find out about activities, they can find out about services, they can find out about healthcare, they can find out about volunteer opportunities. There's lunches available, there's all kinds of things, and they know to go to the senior center even if virtually. We did the same thing at our library. We geared more programs towards senior interests that are going on. And I know we're going to talk about housing and all those other things too, but we were missing that middle housing for people to be able to age in place and weren't quite ready to go completely into an aging community. They wanted to downsize, but not completely, change. So we're looking at that. And then the other thing that's been really popular, we have over 800 seniors registered for pickleball in our community. It's a very social sport, and we don't talk enough about social activities for seniors. That is more than double than what we have in our youth basketball program. So there's a real need for people to come together, to have that healthy lifestyle. And towns and cities are really working towards trying to figure out how to make that work, because it is true. If it's good for an 80-year-old, it's also good for an 8-year-old to have better access to sidewalks and protected bike lanes and all those things that come with that. So we've done a lot of great work. We know we have more work to do, and our seniors in our community are very vocal, so they help us out with that.
Thank you, Mayor. And I must apologize to the cities of Raleigh and Durham and their great universities of NC State and Duke. I did not imply that you do not have universities in your locations. It's just I don't think they make up quite as large a percentage of the city population as perhaps what Chapel Hill does. So again, I didn't mean to infer anything there. Okay, thank you very much for those updates. It's a very challenging activities to lump all these things together and move them forward. Let's talk about the affordable housing issue a little bit and get more specific on that of the needs, of how great they are. And I was involved in some of the discussions of the recent Wake County bond, and $80 million or whatever sounds like a lot, but it's only a small percentage of the needs that are going to be there, and will increase after we get through 2020 and the aftermath of that. So does anyone have particular thoughts on that of the sole most important needs and how you've progressed on that? I know Durham has put in renovated a number of areas and included affordable housing in those functions. That's just because I happened to drive through those areas and worked in Durham for a number of years. I'm not familiar that much with Raleigh or Chapel Hill, but it's a toss-up question for any of you. Okay, Mayor Pam.
So we decided to set goals for affordable housing. And we put benchmarks out there. We passed an affordable housing bond several years ago for $10 million, but we knew that we were going to use that to leverage partnerships. And some of the partnerships, if you read, some of our senior population are veterans, and we partner with other groups to help create housing for them. We also partner with DHIC to build senior housing on town-owned property. We were very specific about that. You've seen Habitat move into doing homes for senior citizens as well, and having seniors in the communities. So you have to work in partnerships. Towns and cities can't do this by themselves. And there is a great need. And again, seniors need a little bit different way to live as well. And so we're looking at those same types of things. Do we have policies that prohibit folks wanting to come in and creating senior communities and working with us on that? And so we're working towards those things. And then we have a great initiative with the university in our North Side neighborhood to allow those folks to age in place, where we have a land bank, amount of money that's put into a pot that's used for land banking, and then working with partnerships to sell those homes with restrictions on them, to keep them affordable, to keep them even in the senior range, whatever that is. And then we work with the different groups in that community as well to do repair work to make sure those seniors can stay in place. So a lot of focus on trying to help people stay where they are. And so that's part of our benchmarking. And we have a dashboard on our website. You can see is how many units per year we're trying to preserve as affordable housing, and how many units we're trying to create for affordable housing over a period of time. And again, can't do it on your own. So you have to work together, and it's only going to get more expensive and more complicated. So it's great that we've all passed bonds to help move us in the forward direction.
Thank you. Mayor Baldwin, that brought to mind and a challenge to Wake County and Raleigh. I know that I think the population of the county is approximately 500,000. The population of Raleigh is probably about the same, somewhere in there. So they're about equal, and yet the demands are huge in both cases, both jurisdictions. How are you working with the county to address this needs. I mean, in terms of available space and available funds and partnerships to address affordable housing.
So Scott, in 2015, the city of Raleigh adopted what we call our Affordable Housing Improvement Plan. And our objective was to significantly increase the number of affordable rental units that we built each year. That year, we also dedicated 1 cent of the tax rate to fund that initiative. And as a result, we've more than tripled the number of units that have been created. As you know, we also passed the housing bond this year, $80 million. There's going to be a major focus on ensuring that there are opportunities for affordable housing, near transit corridors, and permanent supportive housing for the chronically homeless. Our homeless community you can really see that we have not done the work that we need to do. COVID has really brought this to the forefront. So how we have worked with the county is a number of programs. Eviction, like prevention is one area that we're looking at. Families who are living in hotels, trying to get them into stable housing. We've been working with the county on that issue. We have also, the county came out with a number of suggestions for policy changes. And this new council has been systematically going through that. So the first thing was, the county policy encouraged accessory dwelling units. And the former council had a policy that pretty much banned ADUs. And we have now allowed accessory dwelling units by right. That's something that the county had strongly urged all of its communities to do. This gives people flexibility. It allows families to care for aging parents. It allows families to house their boomerang kids, or allows them to rent property. It allows seniors to go live in the ADU and maybe their kids come there or a caretaker comes in. So really, this is all about creating choices. The other thing that the county, another casualty of COVID, but I did bring this up to the county the other day. I had asked for a meeting with the county and the Board of Education right before COVID hit to discuss what land we all own that we could put up for affordable housing. And that is something we all want to do. We've been dealing with other challenges, but moving that back to the forefront, that is a huge opportunity if we can look at what is currently underutilized, underperforming. How do we work together to do that? And bring the Board of Education in there as well. So Pam's right, though. We can't do this on our own. You can't buy your way out of this. But I will say the federal government needs to really take a look at their housing policies and how they can help us through this crisis. That has not been the case. There's very little innovation. There's very little desire to work together. We have, as cities, made countless overtures to the federal government begging for help and some policy changes. And I'm hoping that's something we're going to see, because that can improve status for everybody.
Thank you. Mayor Schuell, I'm not certain of the demographics of Durham City versus Durham County, but I'm probably guessing they're comparable. I don't know, and I know that the county and the city both have applied for and obtained the AARP's livable community plan. But it looked, from what I could read through there, it looked like they were very in line with one another. So how are you working with the county? What are your biggest issues there?
We're working very closely with the county. Before I take on this question, I saw the question in the chat that's directed to Durham, and I just thought I would try to quickly answer that one. which is what community agencies or organizations are, are assisting us in our planning stages for our aging master plan. I can just tell you a few of them. End Hunger Durham, Durham County Veterans Services, Durham County Emergency Management, Durham CAN, Department of Social Services, North Carolina Central University, Parks and Rec, Dementia Inclusion Durham, Cooperative Extension, Durham Center for Senior Life, Alliance Health, Durham's Partnership for Seniors, NC Senior, Tar Heel Legislature, Aging 2.0, Retired Senior Volunteer Program, Alliance of Disability Advocates, Senior Pharmacists. So there are really a lot of organizations. That's just a sampling of them that are working with us on the master plan. So I did want to just answer that question. In terms of housing, I feel like we're finally revved up in Durham and are really putting a lot of affordable housing on the ground, which is great. It's taken us a while. We have 2 cents on our tax rate for affordable housing, and we are, now that we've passed the bond money hadn't kicked in yet, but it will. And so, when I think about particularly for people who are over 60, one of the things we're doing right now is we're renovating Jj Henderson, which is a public housing community for seniors. We'll be just doing the same thing for another senior public housing community on Main Street. We have a tax credit now to do that as well. We're adding 80 units behind Jj Henderson of affordable housing. And we are, like Pam mentioned, we have a lot of, we work a lot with veterans housing, especially through CASA, which is a wonderful nonprofit based in Raleigh. And they have really been a wonderful partner in building housing for veterans, senior veterans, especially in Durham. But we have 80 units of affordable housing going up right next to the bus station. We'll have another 80 units going in at the old police headquarters, 80 units behind Jj Henderson, 80 units now on at a new project on Farrington Road. We are finally in gear where we're building affordable housing, a lot of it, and also preserving a lot of units. It's very expensive. It's very, very expensive to do it. And like my mayoral colleagues, we're using our money to leverage a lot of other funds. Our $95 million affordable housing bond will leverage about another $400 million in private funds and tax credit funds to build affordable housing in Durham. In addition, I think what Marianne and Pam said is really important, which is we can't subsidize our way out of this problem. We have to use all the market mechanisms that we can. And so like them, we passed earlier this year something called Expanding Housing Choices, which makes the missing middle housing that's so valuable to all of us, especially to seniors, available, including accessory dwelling units. We have a financing plan for accessory dwelling units for people who need financing to build them. And we're doing everything that we can to make that housing more available. And I feel really good about that. I feel like we've taken some important steps. Our goals in our housing plan for our master aging plan, one is develop and enforce housing laws to prevent discrimination. And that's very important to us. Another is to provide innovative housing options that are available for all ages and income levels. And I just talked about some of that work, accessory dwelling units and so forth. And then improving collaboration between community residents, private and public entities. And we have a lot of work going on in Durham, through what we call our equitable engagement plan, where we really try to engage communities in the work that affects them. And that includes for housing, and it includes seniors. And so that's also very important work. And then our final goal regarding housing is to improve how information about housing is shared with community members. So this means a dissemination plans that includes preferences for how people want to receive information, resident surveys, and so forth. And then this equitable engagement. And then developing a mechanism to receive feedback from community members that ensures accountability, measures effectiveness, and so forth. And so all this stuff is outlined in our master aging plan, and I think it's going to serve us well.
Thank you. you really can't talk about housing without addressing transportation and how people can move around within the city and municipality, how they get to work, how they get to recreational events. What are some of the biggest, and I know in Durham, I was at the Durham Can event right before the light rail was pulled out from under them, and there was a lot of effort and excitement about getting that approved and online, and then it funding got pulled away and support got pulled away from it. So that was a big piece of their plans on that. So can we talk about what challenges we face with transportation? You've already mentioned some of the Chapel Hill has fare-free buses and routes. But how do you extend that from Chapel Hill out into the county and vice versa? How do you provide that wider range of opportunity for maybe some of those middle ground houses that work in the city but still live out in the countryside and things, but now are driving their cars into work, creating problems and parking issues and things for the city? What are some of the big issues there, and what are your plans to address those? This is a toss-up question for Mayor Pam. Let's go with you.
Yeah, so we've all been involved in our metropolitan planning organizations as we move forward together. We know we have to work together. We're a region. Even though we're 3 individual communities, our folks live and work in each of the different ones, and the rural and versus the urban. We're all in this together, and so we do coordinate with an Orange County transit plan, a Durham County transit plan, a Wake County, but then they talk to each other, and our staffs talk to each other, and elected officials. We get together with Campo, that's coming up, and we talk about a network and how we make this work together. Eventually, I hope we get our policies aligned so that people can understand that they can go from one end to the other and not have to know the different rules in each segment. So we're working towards that as well. Then you have Go Triangle as part of the network in here, and Go Raleigh. I mean, we have it all. It's networking together. So when the light rail wasn't the option, we had to find new options, and we're working towards that. It does take time, but we all 3 have passed that transit tax, the different counties. So we have funding and planning going on to make it a seamless transition for folks. And it's fascinating to see where people work and live and play and how that all spans the gamut of things. So we are working together. The goal is not to keep increasing the highways, just adding more cars. The goal is to really work on different kinds of transportation, multimodal transportation. You're seeing e-bikes really open up, and there's a Triangle Bikeway program now being planned to connect us together with a big greenway that will be bikeable, walkable, so that people have alternative modes of transportation. I will say also that with the event of the Ubers and Lyfts and all those kinds of things, you're seeing people move around a little differently and not necessarily owning cars. So it's been interesting too to see how that all plays together. And then we'll soon be moving into the autonomous vehicle age. So there's a lot of planning that takes place and a lot of collaboration that takes place, because we all realize that we have to work together. We're not going to solve this on our own. And it doesn't make any sense to try to create 3 separate projects. We need it all to work together.
You mentioned the greenways and everything, and I want to say kudos to this area of the state. I think it's a crown jewel of all of our walkways and greenways, that you can go from one county to another with relative ease and safety. So that's I want to thank you for doing that. I partake of it, and they are well utilized.
Oh, definitely.
Mayor Baldwin, you had your hand up earlier.
Just trying to find the mute button. Sorry. Well, as you noted, I spent 9 years on the Go Triangle Board of Trustees. So, the whole light rail discussion, commuter rail discussion has been near and dear to my heart. And I also spent a lot of time before that being an advocate for transit. So in 2016, Wake County did approve the Wake County transit tax in our Wake County transit plan. That plan calls for bus rapid transit in 4 areas: New Bern Avenue, parts of Capitol Boulevard, Western Boulevard, and also we made a decision recently for the 4th to be on Wilmington Street. So that will go from Wilmington, connect to South Saunders. So we're working on that. We have worked on improving our bus service to go with more coverage. Go with more frequency versus coverage. We had a model before that was focused on coverage. So we would send a bus out somewhere twice a day. Well, guess what? Nobody's riding that bus because you need frequency to build a bus system. So we kind of flipped our model and how we do things. So more frequent service, less coverage, but building the bus system that way. We have spent a lot of time focused on our greenway system. We just recently got our very first protected bike lane lanes in downtown. So excited about that, but also excited to really look at how we're going to provide more of those in the future. We need more sidewalks, we need more traffic calming, and we're streamlining the processes for a lot of those to make it easier. Like everything just takes so long in government. Well, we're trying to streamline the process to make that easier. But I'm going to say this, one of our biggest challenges to transit, especially the past 4 years, has been, I'm going to go back to the federal government. We are not getting the funding for transit programs, and kind of flipped to their priorities where they were funding rural highways. And, and I understand that. But when you have urban areas that are growing and in dire need of new forms of transportation, we have to really look at the equity issues there on all sides and make better and fairer decisions for our communities. So, again, I'm hoping that we see from the federal standpoint more opportunities for grants that cover, say, bike lanes and sidewalks and other types of transportation, bus service. I mean, let's face it, what happened in Durham was a result of decisions that were made by government entities to where it was almost impossible to get Durham Orange Light Rail off the ground. So we need more friendlier policies with more of an emphasis on these types of transit.
Scott, would you like me to comment? I've talked a little bit about bus service in Durham, sidewalks and greenways, and I second everything that my colleagues say. I do want to mention also the commuter rail, which we all very much hope will come to fruition. So I'm a baby boomer. I love rock and roll. And when Hopscotch is on in Raleigh, I want to go over there and be there for it. Some of my friends want to equally go to the symphony. And the older we get, the less interested we are in driving it. And it would be incredible for so many reasons to have the commuter rail on in the existing right-of-way on state-owned track that would connect Durham and Raleigh and beyond on both sides. And this is a really important project. Wake County has really done a great job of, I think, leading the way on this. And Go Triangle is the sponsoring agency, and I think this is something that we can both build great local bus systems where we are in our localities, and we can have great regional transit. We got to have great regional transit for jobs, for people getting to jobs, but also for us getting to all the wonderful things that we want to be doing in each other's cities. And so I do want to add that into the mix, that great regional transit is going to be incredibly important to us as we go forward.
And I want to go to DPAC.
Come on over anytime, Mary Ann.
And the Durham Bulls.
And the Durham Bulls, yes.
Looking back and looking forward, there's only a few more days in this year, thank the Lord. How has COVID impacted efforts or influenced future efforts making your city livable? What has COVID kicked to the back of the line, and it's going to make it more different? I for one, I think it has given us a different lens to look through how we live our lives. Zoom, Microsoft Meeting, Teams, I don't think are going to go away. So how has this impact of this pandemic altered your plans for livable communities? It's the toss-up question again. Mayor Pam.
I like to jump in there. It's made it really difficult to get the public input we so desire. People have a harder time connecting because it's virtual from around different parts of the community. So a lot of our projects that we expect to get that input, we're putting on the back burner, waiting till they come out, and we can be together again. And then there's been some positive aspects of this. There's some regional meetings that we had a harder time attending, and I did, when we had to drive a long distance, be at a meeting, drive back, and now we're having higher attendance at those kinds of meetings. So I think you're right. Some things like that will probably stay for the future. But one of the things we've noticed is an increased sense of loneliness and anxiety, especially with our seniors not having as many. Even Meals on Wheels is only delivering once a week, so just checking in with folks. So we worry about folks in the community students who are having to learn online or don't have the resources to have support to learn online. There's a lot of things going on right now that are just taking up our energy, our time. We're working on trying to keep people safe. We're trying to keep people staying in their homes. We're trying to keep people fed. We're trying to keep people informed. And so that takes a lot of staff energy as well, in coordinating all those kinds of activities that are going on in our community, and then our business community, how to get the economy back into full gear and get people working and producing again, and all of that revved up. It's a really hard time right now, but we know we're going to get through it. We know that we're going to learn a lot of lessons while going through it. I get the partnership of my colleagues here and other mayors, Orange County leaders. We meet regularly to talk these things through. So we're all working together. We see the light at the end of the tunnel with the announcement of the vaccines that are coming, and that we know we're going to be back out there. So we're preparing for that. What does that look like right now? So it's been, as someone said, it's like learning to fly a plane while you're building it. It's been an amazing time period, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that I know some people are going to have a much harder time coming out of this than others. We see those disparities as well. They're even more glaring than they were before. So we're learning a lot from that, and we're going to be better at the end of it when we get through it.
Yeah, flying the plane is one thing, but we got to learn how to land it too. So
it's been interesting.
Other comments?
Sure. I think that there are a couple things like Pam described, one of the things that we are really concerned about for a lot of our seniors living alone is isolation and depression. The inability to get out, the inability of family to travel to see them, their inability to travel to see other family. And so one of the things that I'm constantly doing, and I know that my colleagues are too, is encouraging our neighbors to check in on seniors or people who are isolated in their neighborhood. Offer to bring the groceries, drop off the little gift, make the phone call, do all the things that we think are so important to help keep people from being isolated. Feeding has been really important. Feeding our low-income seniors has been a huge job, and it's entailed public expenditures, but also lots of private fundraising to do that job here in Durham. I worry a lot about the coming wave of evictions should the moratorium be lifted, or when the moratoriums are lifted, and that includes our aging population. That is a very scary prospect, and we need to do everything we can to fight that. We have rental assistance funds set aside, $3 million, and we are funding attorneys to represent people in eviction court, and we're doing a lot of that work, but it's not going to be nearly enough should the eviction tsunami occur that I think is possible. And then there's employment. We know that 35% of our low-wage employees prior to the pandemic are now unemployed, and this does include a lot of seniors. We know that a lot of people. I'm working. I'm a senior. I work, and there are a lot of us that do. And so this gives us, I think, all great concern. There are two things that I think will really be have been positive, I would say, in terms of people who are aging. And one of them is that you already mentioned already. I think for people who are mobility challenged, that Zooming has been a real revelation. That it's hard if you can't get to a meeting, but you can get to a Zoom meeting, and I've noticed that already. That people who previously haven't been able to show up have been able to show up on Zoom, and I think that's something we'll keep. And then the other thing that we want so much for our seniors is social participation, civic participation, opportunities to connect and belong, intergenerational opportunities that we talk about in our master aging plan. And I think we've seen a lot of that during COVID, that we've seen so many of our seniors figure out ways to step up and volunteer. And if not in person, ways to do that online. And also during the election, I saw that. I've been amazed at the number of seniors who have been super active in elections and, figured out a way to do it in a COVID safe way. So I think those are all things. I think that all of us who are aging really need to continue to have social participation, civic participation, and opportunities for employment and volunteering. And I think we've seen some opportunities. I think we've seen some avenues towards that that I wouldn't have expected necessarily to see during this time. So, but I do have a lot of fears. I have a lot of fears that as we get through the next few months, that especially with evictions and the continuing concerns about our economy, that we have some days, really hard days ahead of us.
Let's kind of skip ahead here and maybe talk about the state of affairs of medical services in your communities for older adults, and just accessibility and availability to all areas of income residents. Are there specific plans, or is that solely being handled by the hospital complexes as they put up their health centers around, or does the county health services have ways of getting out and making certain that they reach the seniors and the people that are isolated?
So I'll jump in. We're blessed to have 3 major hospital systems in Raleigh, Wake Med, Duke Raleigh, and UNC Chapel Hill. So that has been, it really truly is a blessing. We have seen our hospitals working together with the county to address all these issues. But what we've also seen is new partnerships. So I'll give you an example. Wake Med stepped up and did a mask program, and it was partly funded by the city and Wake County. But then we had all these corporate partners jump in. They went to our, I would say, our low-income areas, handing out masks, fresh food. I've attended a few of these events and helped, hand out food. And when you have a family with kids and, grandma, all there coming to get their masks and food, there's no better feeling in the world. And I will tell you, Wake Med, spearheaded that, realizing that food, mask wearing was one of the most important things we could do, and the kind of outreach that we've done throughout the 27610 zip code. That's where we were having and seeing most of our new cases. Also, that's, a zip code where most of our essential workers are. So, making sure that there was protections in place, improving communications, having strategy plans in place has just been really important. And then working with groups like Resources for Seniors. I mean, that's who people are going to go to. Now, I will say one of the things that I really believe we're lacking, probably nationally, are what I would call senior centers for adults, like who, let me see, like we have a very active seniors program here, but that's for active adults. I'm talking about like someone like my mom, before she passed away, when she lived with me, she was suffering from dementia, and she still had that social connection and wanted a social connection, but I had her in daycare. She would go twice a week, and it just made her smile. I mean, she would do art projects. She would be with other people. That's something that we didn't have before COVID and we don't have now. If you're an active senior, you can get out there and do these things. You can go riding your bike. You can show up at the senior center. But for others, there's limitations. The other thing I would mention is telemedicine. I think we have finally come out of this reality, or whatever, that you have to go to the doctor's office when you're sick. We obviously found out that that's not the case. So I think the use of telemedicine is going to be really important in how we reach and manage seniors who are under care. So that's one of the areas that I'm really interested in.
It's good that we do have some positives that come out of this COVID pandemic, but I agree with you, telemedicine. The stigma of doing that has now been broached, and
no more.
It's shown that we can do it. So
yep,
it's critical. Pam.
So for healthcare for seniors, we do partner with our senior centers and the county health department, and they hold wellness classes. They hold clinics sometimes just for certain particular things. And so people know they can come there. That was before COVID. And I agree with Mary Ann that telemedicine is going to be huge too, as we check in our senior populations in general, just getting people to doctors. But we are very blessed here to have such great health care, and we have Piedmont Health is here as well. And we have the university medical students who come out into the community with planned events specifically aimed at seniors or underprivileged populations, trying to be helpful with, the dental school comes out and does toothbrushing and all that kind of thing. But it really helps to coordinate it through your senior centers so that seniors actually know it's for them, right? And then providing transportation. Our senior center is on the bus routes, many of them. And we also have the Easy Rider if you can't participate on getting the bus yourself. So I think that's important. And then our senior living communities make a great job of community outreach to other seniors as well. And we coordinate some programs with them to hold events and activities where all are welcome to come in, whether you live there or not. And there's more and more adult daycare going on because it's so good for mental health. It's good for the individual going. It's good for the family to get that little respite. And you're seeing more of those communities spring up. And I think that's really, really important as we all move forward together.
Yeah, one of the demographics or statistics that I was looking at recently is statewide, about close to 9% of the population is involved in some type of caregiving for their family members or other people. So that's huge, and it's not an easy job, and it's not being compensated in the normal way on that. So those are needs and areas that we need to encourage and thank and recognize the services that people are providing, because that does make a livable community as well. Okay, we're wrapping up here in the final few minutes here. The one thing we mentioned, I think, earlier on is talking about, people being able to age in place in their housing. I have been involved with my mother who, was always on the farm, was refusing to leave her house out in the middle of 40 acres, and which was okay up to a point. And then we had to, make transitions. And the challenges that we saw was that a house that you can feel comfortable in and get around in at age 70 is no longer viable when you're 80 or 85. And I know that Forsyth County has a program where they've coupled with their county health department and a volunteer organization to go to seniors' homes that request it and do an assessment for mainly safety and accessibility, and they'll put in things like grab bars and ramps and make certain steps and things are appropriate and avoid trip hazards. In addition to in their endpoint outcomes, we're looking at, did they have fewer trips to the emergency room and things. But one of the side effects that they found is that I think they did 2 assessments. One was an initial assessment, and then followed up 6 or 8 months later after it was performed was another assessment of how they were getting along. The mental health, the companionship, the interaction was as valuable as the preventing trips and things to the hospital. So all that you talk about the socialization are critical. And as our aged population, as you initially pointed out, by 2035 is going to be so much larger than it is now, it's time to be thinking about this right now. So, okay, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left. I'm going to hit you with a final, just a little snap question. Each of you will go round robin. Tell me what your 1 or 2 highest priorities are going to be for livable communities that you would like to see achieved over the next 1 or 2 years. Mayor Steve, we'll start with you.
I think we've already hit them, Scott. I think that for us, it'll be affordable housing and accessible housing. It'll be transit and broadly defined, so walkability, bikeability, accessible and frequent, excellent bus service, and it'll be the opportunity for socialization, the opportunity for volunteering and employment and all those things that people who are aging still want to be doing and need to be doing. And I think that those are some of the things I think we'll be prioritizing.
Mayor Pam?
Same thing, but also the middle housing for us, so that people do have more options for aging in place. It's something we're adding on to all the things Mayor Steve just said. And then really looking at our master aging plan and seeing where we still need to continue to make progress on that. We've heard extensively from our community. We did our expanded sidewalks program downtown. People like that. They like wider sidewalks, more places to walk, greenways, more places to be, more green spaces to be in. So we're really taking a look at that to see what people are using and want to use more of in the comments on how to make that a more livable community. And then I'll just go back to that training I mentioned briefly. It's been invaluable to train our town transit workers and library workers on how to interact with our different community populations, seniors being one, but also seniors in different languages. So, and making sure that they know where to go to get those resources. So going either to the library or the senior center, finding out where they can have that information. It's hugely important in keeping a livable community for all.
Thank you. Mayor Baldwin.
Housing. But in addition to housing, affordability and choice, obviously equity and social justice, a very important issue in all of our communities for us to address. And that it too impacts everybody from 80 to 8. Also, as Pam said, just the whole idea of aging in place, I think, is really important. I used to live in a universally designed home, and it is beyond me why we don't have more homes that are designed this way, designed for the disabled, designed for seniors, the design allows you to age in place. So that's going to be one of the drums that I'm beating. In addition to, safer bikeways, and, more parks. One of the things we saw in COVID is that our parks and greenways became flooded with people. Those were the social escapes, and just how necessary it is to have more parks and more greenways accessible to more people.
Well, I thank you all for joining us today and taking the time to participate. I found it very interesting, and I know that there's a lot of activity going on and so much more to do. But with that, we'll close out. Let me say to the viewers here, if these items are of interest to you and you would like to get involved in progressing and partnering with one of these organizations that were mentioned today, just contact your state AARP office and we will match you up with your passion. So please volunteer for AARP, and with that, we'll close out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mayors.
Bye.
Thanks,
Take
Scott.
care.